Hey guys, tonight we slip on borrowed boots from a distant century and wander into streets where the dark still clings to the bricks and sleep has to be made by hand. You're not in your bed yet. You're hovering above old rooftops, feeling wind through cracked shingles, hearing a city breathe the way a person does before waking, and then tap, 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 metal on wood. That sound isn't an accident. That sound is a job. You won't believe this. There was a time when morning didn't arrive unless a human being brought it to you. No buzzers, no glowing screens, just a stranger with a stick and a list. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love imagining your little lights blinking on all over the world. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You step into the shoes of the town waker, sometimes called the knocker-upper, before the streets have decided to be streets. They're long black ribbons between leaning houses, and you walk them in the blue hour with a lantern that smells faintly of oil and soot. In your pocket is a folded list of names. Your whole reputation hangs on being early, never late, and quiet enough to avoid waking the wrong soul. You're not here to begin the day loudly. You're here to nudge it awake. Your stick is your instrument. Maybe it's bamboo or reed, light enough for a gentle tap high on a second-story window. For the stubborn sleepers, you carry a heavier rod, wood on wood, a soft thud that says your name without speaking it. For the upper floors, you've got a pea shooter. Yes, really. Small dried peas that kiss the glass and roll down like tiny drummers. The idea is simple. Wake one household, glide to the next, dissolve with dawn. You're seen by everyone but known by almost no one. The city trusts you more than clocks. In fact, many homes don't even own one worth trusting. Mechanical timepieces exist, sure, but they drift like sleepy eyelids, their springs tired and stubborn. Churches keep grand clocks, and factories ring bells, but most people rely on you. Once in industrial towns, bosses would hand you a route so their workers showed up before the steam did. You're paid by the window, by the week, and sometimes in warm bread when money's thin. In some places, if you miss a tap and a worker misses a shift, you pay the fine out of your own pocket. Time is sharp business here. You develop your own rituals. You learn which windows frost from the inside, which panes rattle when the wind picks up, which households need 2 taps, not 1. There's the seamstress who sleeps like a cat in winter, the baker who's half awake already, the watchman who pretends not to need you but still leaves his shutters loose. At one door, a tiny shoe waits on the sill. Payment, left overnight so you won't have to knock at all. At another, a gruff voice mutters your name like it's both a thank you and a curse. On nights when fog hugs the stones, you lose your way for a heartbeat, and it feels like the city has turned into one long hallway of doors. Somewhere close you hear the rattle of a milk cart. Somewhere far a bell tells a lie about the hour. You correct it, window by window. Your history's snooze button, walking upright. And every now and then you play a trick. Nothing mean. Just a pea bounce twice on a window already awake. A neighbour rustles. A laugh smothered in a sleeve. The city, you've learned, likes to remember it's alive before it has to work. By the time the sky dilutes from ink to grey, you're done. The list is folded tight, the stick warm from your palms. You pass a shop where urine-soaked wool will later be stomped by someone else's bare feet. Remember that smell. It comes back to us soon. For now, you're lighter than the hours you carry. You fade as breakfast fires spark, slipping into nowhere while your morning stays behind. You don't get a hero's welcome. No one greets the waker when the waker is done. Your work is like fog, noticed most when it's missing. But there's something deeply satisfying in that. You've stitched the city together while it still sleeps. You've kept the machine turning before the gears even remember how, and now as others stretch their arms and slap their cheeks awake, you're slipping home, boots damp with dew, breath curling into ribbons behind you. At home, if you're lucky enough to have one, you hang your stick by the door or tuck it beneath the eaves. You roll your shoulders, which are always stiff from walking in half cold for hours. Sometimes you peel off a layer of your coat and find it still damp from last Tuesday's drizzle. You sit down by the hearth, and if the coals haven't gone out, you warm your fingers while the world behind your eyelids finally catches up. But the job doesn't leave you easily. Even in sleep you're haunted by glass, tapping on it in dreams, missing a name on the list, hearing the too late toll of a missed shift. One time, you swear you dreamt of tapping your own window and saw yourself roll over, annoyed at the interruption. The job isn't dangerous, not exactly, but the dark holds its own set of risks. Drunks, thieves, dogs that don't like shadows. More than one knocker-upper has carried a truncheon tucked beneath their cloak. There are streets where the lamps never reach, and corners that seem to bend just a little too sharply. In rougher neighbourhoods, you knock faster and walk away quicker. There's no one to protect you at 4:01 a.m, only the hope that you look like someone with purpose. Some wakers are elderly, others are children helping their families scrape by. In the mill towns of Lancashire, some women took on the task and became local legends, not because they were strong or swift, but because they never missed a morning, not even in snow. One old woman in Manchester used a long fishing rod to reach third-storey windows, another carried a ladder with wheels, and then there's the man who, they say, never once spoke aloud between dusk and dawn, just a tap, just the silence. And then comes the awkwardness. What happens when you need waking? You who wake the town, who wakes you? Some knocker-uppers had families who shook them by the toe before dawn. Others kept tiny timepieces beside their bed and prayed they hadn't drifted. There's something deliciously ironic about the idea of a human alarm clock oversleeping, though you'd never admit it if you did. Over time, people stop noticing you. That's part of the magic. You become part of the scenery, like the lampposts or the chimneys. But there's a strange pride in it too. You know the pulse of the street before anyone else. You know which homes stir early, which dogs bark on cue, which curtains flutter half open even before the sun peeks in. You know secrets no one else does, like who switched shifts without telling the boss, or which household was awake before your knock ever came. Eventually your work will vanish, electric clocks will creep into bedrooms, followed by the radio, the telephone, and then the glowing rectangles we cradle today. But for a little while longer, in this soft slice of the past, your knock still matters. Your pee still hits its mark. Your name still murmurs on tired lips behind fogged-up glass. And tomorrow, before the sky bruises blue, you'll do it all again. One window at a time. Tap, tap, tap. The sun hasn't risen yet, and you're already ankle-deep in mud that doesn't care who you are. There's a faint mist curling over the bogs and a breathless hush across the flat, wet land. You move carefully, testing the ground before each step, because you know what's waiting for you isn't just hidden, it's hungry. You're not here to catch fish, or to trap frogs, or to hunt birds. You're here for leeches. And the worst part is, you're not using bait. You're using yourself. You roll up your trousers, cinch your belt, and step into the water barefoot. No shoes, no armour, just the skin on your calves, warm and pulsing, offered like a buffet. This is the job, a leech collector. You wander through ponds and marshes, sometimes for hours waiting for something cold and slick to latch on and start feeding. It happens slowly. First a tickle, then a slight pressure. You know better than to brush it away. Let it drink. Let it swell. One leech, then 2, then 5. You resist the urge to gag, not because of the pain, but because of the movement. They shift, they writhe. Some curl into your arches, one dares to climb toward your thigh. Still, you stand still, heart thudding like a warning drum inside your chest. Leeches were medicine back then. Not superstition, not snake oil, actual prescriptions. Physicians in the 18th and 19th centuries believed in balancing the body's humours, and that meant bloodletting. For everything from fever to headaches to melancholy, a good bloodletting was the go-to cure. And leeches were cleaner than knives, self-sanitizing even, or so they thought. And that's why you're here, in the same spot where your uncle stood, and his uncle before him. Your family's made a living from blood-sucking for generations. Town doctors, barbers, apothecaries. They all paid good coin for a fresh sack of the squirming things, especially the big ones, the fat, glossy leeches, the ones that had a taste for ankle veins and didn't let go until they were bloated with rust-coloured meal. You carry a tin can or a cloth sack slung over your shoulder. Sometimes it leaks. Sometimes a leech escapes and crawls down your back before you notice. There are days when your legs are so riddled with puncture marks that you have to limp home. You've passed out once or twice from blood loss. A badge of honour in this line of work. The land fights back too. Not just the marsh sucking at your feet like it wants to keep you. There are brambles, swarms of biting flies, sudden holes that swallow your shin with a splash. You have to memorise safe paths, those dry hummocks hidden beneath green tufts, the spot where the frogs avoid because it's too deep even for them. You become a student of the swamp. You listen, and the worst days, the days when the leeches aren't hungry, when you wade through for hours and nothing bites. You slap your calves in frustration trying to tempt them. You might even nick yourself with a pin draw, a little blood to get their attention. Because no leeches means no pay, and no pay means going home to a table with nothing on it. Still, there's an odd rhythm to it, a stillness. The world around you doesn't speak much, and neither do you. Just the sound of water swishing as you move, the occasional bird call, the slick snap of something letting go of your skin. And now and then, though you'd never admit it, you catch yourself staring at the sunrise across the bog and thinking, maybe there's something peaceful here. Then a leech clamps on your toe and the moment's gone. By mid-morning your legs are a battlefield. Puncture marks ooze slowly, some still trickling, others clotting into itchy dots. You don't bandage them. What's the point? Tomorrow you'll be back in the same water feeding the same creatures. You used to flinch at the sight, but now it's just part of your skin. The ache settles into your muscles like an old song. One you hum through your teeth while checking the bag of wriggling prizes you've collected. You head toward the village, careful not to jostle the sack too much. A ruptured leech isn't just disgusting, it ruins the others. No one wants damaged goods. Apothecaries are picky like that. You've even heard of collectors who swallow leeches alive to transport them, letting them squirm in the gut like passengers in a stomach stagecoach. You haven't tried that. Yet. At the back door of the barber surgeon's shop, you knock 3 times and wait. He doesn't greet you with a smile, just a sniff, a glance, and a gesture. You pour the leeches into a shallow tin so he can inspect them. Fat ones get you extra. Sluggish ones he'll wave away like rotten pears. You try not to take it personally. Sometimes, if he's in a good mood, he'll let you watch. You've seen the barber tie a child's arm with a leather strap, press a leech on the softest part of the elbow, and watch it cling like a hungry button. The child didn't even cry, just stared in horror while the creature puffed up with their blood. Once the barber used your leech to treat a baker's infected foot. The thing detached after 10 minutes, drunk and slow, and fell into a bowl with a plop. You wondered if it remembered you. You carry on to the next shop and maybe the next. In some towns, competition's stiff. There's a woman with a basket who charms customers with sing-song stories about her little doctors. She even names them. You don't. That's madness. But she outsells you more days than not, and you hate how she whistles when she passes you in the lane. If no one's buying, you can't afford to let the leeches die. You keep them damp in moss or soaked cloth, stored in a small box back home that smells like pond water and vinegar. And yes, sometimes when things get desperate, you put your own arm in the box. Let them feed. Keep them strong. It's either that or lose your entire stock. Better to bleed a little now than starve later. People don't respect the job. They wrinkle their noses and mutter bloodsucker under their breath. You used to yell back, something about clean medicine, about being part of the healing process. Now you just smile and let them look away. They'll change their tune when they've got a boil the size of a plum and a fever to match. Years pass like that. Marshes in the morning, tin cans sloshing, swollen legs and slow coin. Eventually science marches on and declares your creatures barbaric. New medicines take their place. Your name falls off the shopkeepers' lists. Your work fades into history's damp margins. But for a time, you were needed, essential, a quiet partner to the doctor, the barber, the bleeding bowl. You stood barefoot in the earth and let the past feed itself through you, one bite at a time. The city's asleep. Not in the gentle, dreamlike way you'd want. It's more like a long, queasy groan under cobblestone slick with last night's rain. The air smells like wet ash, rotten cabbage, and something else you don't want to name. You move quietly, with a bucket in each hand, careful not to spill. The contents slosh with a weight that makes your arms ache before sunrise. You're a night soil man, and what you carry is exactly what it sounds like. There's no polite word for it, really. Human waste, collected from chamber pots, privies, cesspits, and outhouses, usually before the rest of the town opens its windows. You don't advertise your presence. You don't knock. You just slip down the alleys and back lanes, buckets swinging, nose already numb from the smell. You work in the dark for a reason. Most folks would rather not see your face, let alone speak to you. In some parts of the city, you wear a bell to warn others away. Not to protect them, just to keep their disgust from spilling onto the cobbles. You're the invisible backbone of a sanitation system that hasn't been invented yet. There's no sewage line here, no underground tunnels of flowing filth. Just you, your buckets, and a path through shadows. You stop behind a boarding house where they've left the usual signal, a cracked red tile beside the rear gate. It means the privy's full. No one speaks. They just want it gone. You hoist the wooden lid, gag once and set to work. A small tin scoop, a practised wrist, and in go the contents. It's rhythmic, in a grim sort of way. Fill, seal, move on. The stink doesn't bother you as much anymore. You've learned to breathe through your mouth, hum quietly through your teeth, and rub mint or vinegar under your nostrils before you begin. Still, some mornings are worse than others. You remember a hot July week when the heat turned every bucket into a boiling cauldron of horror. That was the only time you threw up and had to clean that up too. You're paid per load. Not a fortune, but enough to eat, sometimes enough to drink. The work's dirty but honest. You tell yourself that. You repeat it when you pass the butchers, who sneer even though their gutters run red. You whisper it when a child points and says, "Mum, why does that man carry poop?" And the mother pulls them away like you've got the plague. Speaking of which, you are essential. The less night soil there is on the streets, the fewer rats, the fewer fleas, the fewer diseases. You've read no books on it, but you've seen the difference. Whole alleys smell sweeter because of you. No one thanks you, of course, but you see the ripple. Fewer coughs, fewer flies, fewer funerals. Your route weaves behind bakeries and brothels, weaving through silent courtyards and over dripping gutters. You work fast but not carelessly. A spill would be a disaster for your reputation, for your boots, and for everyone living near the splash zone. You've heard of men being chased out of neighbourhoods for just that. Beaten with broom handles, pelted with rotted onions, it's not a forgiving job. By the time the sky starts turning silver, your arms are trembling from the weight. You trudge toward the dumping grounds, usually a pit just outside the city wall, or a shallow trench in the woods marked with old boards and stink lines. There, you empty your buckets in silence, watching the slow ooze slide into the earth, hoping the next rain comes soon to wash it all deeper, and tomorrow you'll be back. Same buckets, different stink. As the day begins for others, yours quietly ends in a shed behind your rented room. The buckets are rinsed, barely. You'd like to give them a good scrub, but water cost coin, and you're already stretching your wages thin. You flip them upside down to dry, watching brown streaks run off into the dirt like guilty thoughts. The smell clings. No matter how often you wash your hands, it lingers in the cracks of your knuckles, behind your ears, even in your dreams. Some night soil men have tricks. One keeps a pouch of lavender tied around his neck. Another swears by smoking a pipe throughout his shift to keep the stink out the brain. You tried both. Didn't help. Best strategy is to keep moving. If you slow down, the odour wins. If you stop altogether, the job will too, and then who'll pay for your bread and coal? There's a saying, don't touch what you can't name, but you know every type. You can tell a sick household just by the colour. You can smell the difference between rich and poor, believe it or not. The well-fed leave behind something very different from the starving. There's shame in realising how much of life can be judged by what's left behind in a wooden box. You've started noticing things no one else sees. Like other richer houses, those with brick walls and proper chimneys produce more waste. Or how the homes with the sickest smells often have children's shoes at the doorstep. You try not to think about it too much, but it builds. A quiet anger maybe, or a sorrow you can't name. You carry more than buckets each night, but there are light moments too. Once you found a silver spoon in a privy. You cleaned it, sold it, and bought yourself new boots. Another time, a terrified cat leapt out of the pit as you opened the lid, clawing your arm and knocking your lantern into a pile of straw. You've never moved so fast. The cat survived. The straw didn't. You laughed for a full minute once the panic passed, knees shaking, lantern in hand, thinking, what a way to go that would have been. There are rumours, of course. Tales told in taverns when people get too many ales in them. One night soil man supposedly went mad from the fumes and ran naked through the town, screaming about ghosts in the sewers. Another claimed he'd seen gold rings at the bottom of a cesspit and dove in to fetch them. You never saw him again. But then, you never checked. If the story was true, your hands are thick with calluses. Your boots leak a little more each week. But you've got steady work, and in a world that doesn't offer much of that, it's something to hold on to. You've even made friends in low places. Other tradesmen no one speaks to. The rat catcher, the chimney sweep, the tanner. You nod when you pass, share a drink when the purse allows. You speak little, but understand much. It's a brotherhood of the unseen. And now, as the city stretches into life, you slip through its cracks like smoke. You pass the baker setting out his first loaves, the milkmaid yawning beside her pails, and the knocker-upper tapping his last window. Remember him? You nod to each other in passing. Not quite friends, not quite strangers, just two quiet workers, leaving no footprints, only clean streets and open windows behind. You don't remember the house itself, just the door. Thick oak, dark with age, carved with some family crest long since worn away by rain and time. It groans when you push it open, and the air inside is heavy, not with smoke or dust, with silence. A strange, taut kind of silence. The kind that presses against your chest and makes you swallow hard, though you're not sure why. You've been summoned. That much is clear. And though no one greets you, you already know your role. You're the Plague Watcher. You take your place at the threshold, not inside, not out. The door stays open just a sliver behind you, and you don't dare turn your back on it. Your job is simple. Don't let anyone in. Don't let anyone out. The wooden board nailed across the frame bears a mark, usually a painted red cross, sometimes smeared with tar, sometimes written in haste with a brush dipped in blood. It says what everyone already suspects. Someone inside is sick, possibly with the plague, possibly dying, possibly already dead. But you're not here to help them. You're here to watch. It's a job no one envies and few understand. You're paid by the city, meagre coin handed to those deemed expendable or already recovered. Maybe that includes you. Maybe you've survived something, and this is how the town decides your worth. Maybe your brother was the first to catch the fever, and now you stand guard as penance. You've got a halberd or staff, not so much for protection as for enforcement. Your orders are clear. No one is to cross the threshold, not for bread, not for medicine, not even for prayer. The family inside depends on you not to let them out. It's a twisted kind of trust. Sometimes you hear them, feet shuffling behind the door, a cough that echoes too long, a child's voice asking if it's morning yet. One evening, a woman called out softly, "Please, just tell me what time it is." You didn't answer. You're not supposed to speak to them, not even once. Most hours pass in quiet. You shift your weight, scan the street, chew on the end of your scarf. No one wants to be near you. Some cross to the far side of the road when they see your post. Others toss you bread wrapped in cloth, never meeting your eye. You're not just a guard, you're a warning, a walking reminder that the sickness still has claws. You work in shifts, though the hours blur. Another watcher may relieve you at dusk, but sometimes no one comes. In that case, you stay. You eat standing up. You sleep sitting against the doorframe, staff across your lap like a gate. Once a man tried to bribe you. He slipped out through a side shutter, trembling and pale, offered you a whole shilling to look the other way. You didn't take it, but you still remember his eyes, wide and wet like a cornered animal. He didn't make it far. The constables found him hours later, collapsed near the fish market. His name never made the records, but you remember it anyway. And sometimes the house goes quiet. No footsteps, no coughing, no whispers through the door. You wait a few hours longer, then a day, then two, still nothing. At that point your orders change. You fetch a city official, maybe a doctor. They arrive with gloves and vinegar cloths and disappear behind the door you've guarded for days. When they emerge, their faces are pale. They don't speak. You just nod. Your shift is over. After shifts like that, you walk home without a sound in your throat. The world feels thinner, as if the houses themselves are holding their breath. You pass shuttered windows and smell lie in the gutters. A sign someone nearby has scrubbed something unspeakable. You scratch at the seam of your collar where the vinegar-soaked cloth has chafed your skin raw. A badge of the job like the sore feet or the empty stomach. But don't think this makes you a hero. No one sees you that way. You're not celebrated. You're avoided. You sit alone at alehouses if you bother to go at all. You eat outside when you can. You hear whispers behind your back. He watches the marked houses. He's seen them die. Some folks believe you carry the sickness just by standing near it. Others say you bring bad luck. A woman once spat near your boots and muttered something about curses. You didn't argue. You just kept walking. The pay isn't generous. It's just enough to keep you from starving, and maybe that's the point. You're not expected to last long. Not in a job like this. It's often given to the desperate, the old, the sickly, the unlucky. If you have no family, no prospects, and nothing left to lose, congratulations, you qualify. Still, there's something else. A strange pride. A weight in your chest that says, I showed up. When the air turned sour and the streets emptied, you were the one who stayed. You kept the line. You didn't run. And you've seen things that don't make sense. A house marked for plague where the entire family emerged healthy days later, singing even. Another where no one ever knocked from within, and yet at night you swore you saw candlelight dancing across the upstairs window. You don't talk about those moments. The city forgets what it fears, and your job is to forget along with it. Sometimes, late at night, you walk past a door you once guarded. It's clean now, the mark washed away. New people moved in, a flower box added, a curtain swaying in the breeze. You wonder if they know. You wonder if you ever truly knew what was happening inside. There's an old superstition whispered among plague watchers. If you listen too closely to a dying house, it'll call your name one night and you won't be able to leave. You laughed at it once. Now, you're not so sure. You've kept your name off the death rolls for now. But you keep a list in your coat pocket, scratched in charcoal, just the street names, the ones you've stood before, a strange little ledger of silences. Your boots are worn through at the toes. Your cough lingers, longer than it should. Still, each time you're called, you go. You take up your staff, your vinegar rag, and your post by the door. You breathe shallow. You wait. And when someone peeks through a curtain down the street and sees you there, still, silent, watching, they shudder, pull the drapes tight and whisper a prayer. Not for themselves, for you. The street is quiet when you arrive, though the smell gives it away long before the doorway does. It's thick, swampy and wrong, like something ancient clawing its way up from the earth. You've grown used to bad smells by now, but this one still curls your lip. You pause for a moment, tucking a cloth under your nose, and then step forward. It's time to descend. You're a gong farmer, one of the few brave or desperate enough to climb down into the cesspits of the city. You wait until nightfall. This isn't work meant for daylight. No one wants to see you do it, and frankly, neither do you. A wooden trapdoor creaks open behind a tavern, revealing a narrow shaft lined with stone and grime. You light your lantern, sling your tools over your shoulder, and drop in with a squelch. Your boots vanish instantly into the soft, viscous floor. This pit hasn't been emptied in years. The smell hits harder inside. It's not just rot, it's time itself, layered and fermented. You try not to breathe too deeply. You move slowly, not from fear, but from necessity. One wrong step and you'll sink. People have died this way. No one talks about them, but every gong farmer knows the stories. A man in Coventry stepped into an old chamber that had gone hollow underneath. He was never seen again. His shovel was found days later floating near the surface. Your tools are basic. A long-handled scoop, a bucket on a rope, and a flat-bladed shovel for scraping the corners. You work by feel as much as sight. The lantern barely cuts the darkness, and you've learned that shadows down here don't behave like they do above. They cling. They crawl. You try not to look too long at the walls. The cesspit is nearly full, and it's your job to empty it, one slow scoop at a time. The contents will be hoisted to the surface and dumped into waiting carts. From there, it'll be taken to the outskirts of the city to fields where it's sold as fertilizer. They call it night soil, though you know better. It's your life, in liquid form. There's a rhythm to the work. Scoop, drag, lift. Your hands blister even through gloves. Sweat slides down your neck and mixes with the muck on your collar. You hum to keep your mind distracted. An old lullaby your mother used to sing. You can't remember the words, only the tune. It doesn't help much, but it fills the space. Sometimes you find things. Coins dropped by careless guests in the privy above. Buttons, the occasional ring. You pocket them, of course. A tiny reward for your trouble. One man found a pocket watch once, still ticking. He wore it for years like a medal. The walls drip with moisture. You wipe your brow and leave a streak of filth across your forehead. You've stopped caring. This is the 5th pit you've cleared this week and your body's starting to protest. Knees stiff, back locked. You'll soak in a tub later, if the water's still warm by the time you return. If not, well, you've gone to bed worse. You pause to rest, leaning against the pit wall, and close your eyes. You think of the stars outside. You haven't seen them tonight, but you know they're there, watching over even this dark, foul-smelling corner of the world. Somewhere above, the city dreams in ignorance, safe and clean, while you haul away its filth one shovelful at a time, and you'll keep doing it, 'cause someone has to. Your shoulders groan as you lift another brimming bucket to the surface, the rope slick with a mix of sweat and sludge. Above you, the cart driver coughs, shifts his weight, then empties the load into the waiting barrel with a wet slap. He doesn't speak. He rarely does. No one wants to strike up a conversation while standing over a hole full of human waste. You wipe your brow with the back of your sleeve and keep going. There's no pause in this kind of work. No comfort, no dignity, only progress, measured one disgusting bucket at a time. And yet, despite everything, there's a strange sense of order here. The pit was chaos when you arrived, but now it's something else. A system, a process. You're carving tunnels through years of filth, revealing the shape of the chamber beneath. It's not beautiful, but it's something. You take pride in that. A cesspit emptied is a quiet victory. No applause, no medals, just the knowledge that tomorrow no one will be ankle deep in overflow. You learn things down here that most folks never consider, like how people dispose of secrets, a torn letter, a broken brooch, a scrap of cloth stained with something that isn't ink. They all end up here eventually. You don't ask questions, but sometimes, as your shovel hits something soft or brittle or suspiciously quiet, you wonder what story just disappeared into the dark. Back above ground, when the last of the buckets is emptied and the pit resealed, you climb out slowly, blinking at the lantern light like a mole coming into the sun. The cart rattles away toward the edge of town, and you're left standing in a puddle, boots dripping, hands raw. A dog barks somewhere down the alley, and a door slams shut at your passing. No one thanks a gong farmer. You're not invited into polite company. Some taverns won't serve you if they recognize your boots. Children dare each other to touch your sleeve. You try not to take it personally. The same people who avoid your gaze now would be ankle deep in their own filth without you. There's a quiet fraternity among you and the other gong farmers. You nod at each other when you pass, never needing to speak. You recognize the signs, how they keep their gloves tucked into their belt, how their boots are always 2 washes from clean. There's even a code scratched into alley walls or etched into privy doors, marking which pits are full, which are shallow, and which to avoid unless you want to disappear under the surface. Sometimes, at the end of a long night, you stop by the river to rinse off. Not bathe, exactly. Just enough to take the edge off before heading home. You know the water's no cleaner than the pits, but it's moving, and that counts for something. You watch the muck swirl away, and for a moment feel almost human again. Then it's home, where you scrub under your nails with ashes, boil your clothes and hang them by the fire. You eat with your fingers, because forks are for people who don't dig through the city's bowels, and when you finally lie down, the stink follows you. Into your sheets, into your dreams. But you sleep somehow, and when the next call comes, you'll be ready. Because under every polite society, someone has to clean up what no one wants to see. And for now, that someone is you. The city has gone still, not in sleep, but in fear. Streets once loud with footsteps are hushed, and shutters close a little tighter each day. Word travels faster than any runner. Something is spreading. Something unseen. Something deadly. You hear rumours of fevers, of swellings, of entire households gone quiet overnight, and now, somehow, it's your job to stand between the living and the ill. You're a plague watcher again, but this time not assigned to one house. No, now you patrol entire quarters of the city, where infection moves like smoke and fear clings to every corner. There's no line between duty and dread. No guard post to lean against, just endless streets and a list of names scratched onto parchment that feels too thin to bear their weight. Your orders have changed. This isn't like the marked houses before, where you watch the door for days. Now you're mobile. A roaming sentinel with a lantern in one hand and a tally stick in the other. You record every household that reports a fever. You deliver notices. Sometimes you nail the plague board to a door yourself, red paint still sticky, dripping like a warning. Other times, you speak to no one, just mark the gate, turn, and keep walking. The air has changed. It's not just the scent of unwashed clothes or spoiled meat anymore. It's the smell of abandonment. Streets that were once humming are now quiet in the wrong way. Even the rats hesitate. You step over cracked cobblestones, passing empty carts and doorsteps swept clean too recently. A child's toy lies forgotten in the gutter. A single glove. A loaf of bread going stale on a windowsill that no one thought to pull inside. You wear a mask now. Leather. Stiff. With a long beak stuffed with herbs and spices. The apothecary swears it helps. You're not so sure. It smells like rosemary and vinegar, and it makes your breath echo in your ears like distant thunder. You speak through it softly, your voice barely human anymore. It frightens people. That's probably the point. The days blur. You patrol from one end of the district to the other. You knock on doors with the back of your gloved hand. Sometimes they answer, sometimes they don't. You write down the addresses either way. You've learned not to linger. If someone coughs too close, you walk away. Quickly. You've seen too many watchers disappear after just one misstep. It's not just the illness that threatens you. It's the people. You're the face of bad news now. The one who brings the order to seal a home, to deny entrance, to take away a body. You've had rocks thrown at you. Buckets of slop tipped from above. One woman chased you down the street screaming curses in a voice that didn't sound like her own. You didn't stop running until your lungs gave out. Still, you show up the next morning. You collect your tally stick, your mask, your lantern, and you walk the streets no one else will. The city needs someone to map its grief, even if the map changes every day. By dusk, your boots are heavy with mud and your gloves stink of sweat and fear. You return to the watch station, a converted stable with 2 beds, 1 pot of stew, and a silence that nobody wants to break. You sleep in your clothes. No one wants to touch the garments once they've been out there. You keep them on like a second skin. Even your dreams are quiet now. When morning comes, you don't feel it in the sky. You feel it in your bones. A weight, not from sleep, but from the lack of it. You rise, wash your face in cold water that stings your skin, and rewrap the cloth beneath your mask. The herbs are dry now. Yesterday's rosemary has turned brittle. You crumble a few more sprigs into the beak, breathing in the sharpness like it might cut through the dread lodged deep in your chest. Outside, the streets are no friendlier. Someone's drawn a chalk circle around your door. A crude warning. Plague worker inside. You stare at it for a moment, then step right over it. Let them fear you. You're too far gone to care what they think. You pass homes you marked last week, some now boarded entirely, their windows shuttered with planks like coffins turned upright. You avoid eye contact with the neighbours. They pretend not to see you, but you catch the flicker behind curtains, the whisper of breath from behind doors. You know they're watching. Today, you're assigned to carry notices to the edge of town. The infected quarter is growing. You post signs at crossroads and taverns, hammering them in with stiff fingers. No entry. Quarantine in effect. You wonder if anyone will read them, or if they'll be torn down before dusk. You once saw a man rip one down, shouting that illness was God's will and no paper could stop it. You never saw him again. Some watchers carry whistles or bells. Not you. You prefer silence. It's safer, quieter. You move like a shadow, checking lists, updating addresses, making sure no one has slipped through the cracks. You learn to spot liars quickly. The too steady voice, the sweat above the brow, the strange stiffness in the shoulders. You don't accuse them. You just mark the door and walk on. By the time anyone notices, the city will have made its decision. At midday, you pass through the market. Half the stalls are empty, the rest quiet and cautious. A boy offers you bread, not out of kindness, but fear. His mother watches from behind him, eyes narrow. You take the bread, nod once, and keep walking. You'll eat it later, back at the station, sitting in the doorway, boots still on. There's one house you dread each round. A stone cottage near the river, small but proud. Last week it was cheerful. A red curtain, flower pots on the sill. This week the door is marked. You posted the notice yourself. Today the curtain is gone, the pot's shattered, and when you pass, someone inside knocks. Softly. 3 times. You freeze. You're not supposed to answer, not supposed to engage. But the sound stirs something in you. You stand there longer than you should, hand tightening around the tally stick before finally walking on. You lie to yourself. I didn't hear it. It was just the wind. By evening, you're back at the station. You record your routes, soak your hands in vinegar and try to forget. But it stays with you. The chalk circle, the knock, the boy with the bread. You hang your coat by the fire, but your skin still smells like smoke and old sweat. You sleep with your back to the wall, listening to your own breath echo inside the mask you haven't taken off in 3 days. In a city gripped by silence, you've become its listener, its shadow. And if someone knocks on your own door tomorrow, you're not sure you'll answer either. It's a cool morning, and you're already halfway through your loaf of bread when you hear them muttering behind your back. A glance over your shoulder confirms it. The butcher's wife again. She crosses herself when she sees you. Someone spits near your boot. You try not to flinch. You've gotten used to it by now. After all, everyone knows what you do. You're the executioner, and no one wants to share a bench with a man who swings the axe. You keep your hood low, your cloak dark, and your pace steady. You don't need to announce yourself. Your reputation travels faster than your footsteps. Even the dogs hesitate when you pass. The funny thing is, you're not allowed to disappear completely. You must be visible on market days, part of your civic role, a reminder, a warning. You don't like being here, standing near stalls of garlic and wool, pretending to browse turnips while the blacksmith stares a hole through your chest. But you do it anyway. You're obligated. The city expects its justice to be seen. You weren't born to this trade. No one is. It found you when you were at your lowest. Your debts high. Your prospects gone. The job offered lodging, a stipend, even meat when rations were short. But it came with terms, isolation, contempt, and of course, the work itself. You remember your first time, the trembling hands, the crowd's breath held in unison, the way the condemned man looked at you, not with anger, but with resignation. That stayed with you. You've learned since then how to make it clean, One swing, always one. You sharpen your own blades, you test the weight, you whisper a prayer, not for their soul, but for your hands. Still, there's more to the job than the final act. You're the one who prepares the scaffold, inspects the rope, checks the wood for rot. If something goes wrong, it's on your head. A dull blade, a snapping rope, a crowd turning ugly. You've seen a man botch the job and be torn apart by the very people he worked for. You never forgot that. Your house stands near the edge of town, deliberately placed. A little stone cottage with thick shutters and a strong lock. The city built it for you, part of the contract. Some call it the hangman's house. No one ever comes by. Children dare each other to touch the gate. You find little footprints in the dust, but they never stay long. You're paid in coin, but also in exemption. No taxes, no tolls, and certain liberties. Some merchants must sell to you by law, even if their hands tremble as they count your change. And yet, the discount doesn't taste right. You take your food home quickly, unwrap it with care, and eat in silence. Oddly, some people do seek your company, not out of warmth, but curiosity. The drunk, the lost, the ones fascinated by what death looks like up close. They ask you strange questions over ale. Did he cry? Did he beg? Did you ever miss? You've learned not to answer. A shrug does better than the truth. Once, someone asked, what the hardest part was, you didn't have to think long. Coming home, you said. Home is quiet, not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of silence that presses against the windows and settles into the corners of the room like dust. You don't decorate. You don't need to. There are no guests, no laughter, no borrowed dishes waiting to be returned. Just a plain wooden table, a hearth that smells faintly of coal, and a stool that creaks when you sit too fast. You keep your tools in a locked chest, the axe polished and wrapped in oiled cloth, the spare blades, the whetstone you use every Sunday morning, even if you don't need to. There's a rhythm in the scraping, a steadiness. Some men go to church. You sharpen steel. People assume you're heartless, that you sleep easy, that you feel nothing for the lives you end. But you remember every face, not in a dramatic way, just as a list burned quietly into the folds of your memory. The thief with the stutter, the soldier who saluted you before kneeling, the nobleman who tried to bribe you with a gold ring in his boot. You refused, not because you're moral, but because the job is cleaner when it's impersonal. And yet, it never really is. You once saw a woman in the crowd, young, trembling with red gloves. She didn't cry. She just stared, lips pressed shut. Afterward, someone said she was the condemned man's sister. You've never forgotten her. The gloves, the way her eyes never left your hands. Sometimes you dream of the scaffold. Not the moment itself, but the sound. The hush of the crowd, the creak of the plank, the birds going still just before the axe falls. In the dream, you're the one kneeling. You always wake up before the swing. You try not to think about the days ahead. But you know there's another sentence waiting, another cart, another face. The town clerk delivers the orders on parchment sealed with wax, and he never meets your eyes, just sets the scroll on the doorstep and walks away. You read it slowly. You memorize the name. Then you fold it and place it in the drawer beside your whetstone. The day arrives. You wake early, eat nothing. You put on your coat, the one that's never washed, and walk through streets that open like wounds as you pass. The scaffold is already prepared. You check the bolts last night. You check them again this morning. The condemned man is silent. Sometimes they speak, sometimes they don't. You nod, but say nothing. That's your rule. You place the blindfold gently. You raise the blade. And when it's done, you don't linger. The crowd erupts, some cheer, Some boo, a few cry. You don't stay for any of it. You walk home by the back lanes, avoiding the square. You step over a child's ball, abandoned in the mud. You reach your door, lock it behind you, and sit by the fire until the sun disappears. Then you clean the axe. The shine never stays long, but it's not about the shine. It's about the ritual, the rhythm, the idea that something can be made clean again, even if only on the surface. And tomorrow you'll walk to the market for bread. The butcher will look away, the baker will flinch, someone will whisper. The crowd forgets quickly. But you don't. You never do. It's cold in the corridor and you shift from one foot to the other, rubbing your arms. Not from the chill, but from nerves. The whip is coiled neatly on the table beside you, and the schoolmaster is late. Again. You glance at the window. He's in the courtyard, laughing with the other boys. You can't hear them, but you can see it in the tilt of his head, the way he swats someone on the shoulder like it's a game. But it won't be a game in 5 minutes, because you are the one who will be punished. You're the whipping boy. It's an arrangement only the privileged could invent. The noble child may not be beaten. His body is too sacred for that. But someone must be punished when he misbehaves, so that someone is you. You, the companion, the shadow, the friend when it's convenient, and the sacrifice when it's not. The two of you are raised together, fed together, schooled together. Sometimes you even sleep under the same roof. You know his handwriting, his fears, his favourite food. You also know the precise angle at which the cane strikes your palm when he lies. And he does lie. Often. Today it was Latin. He refused to recite the declension. Laughed. Made a rude rhyme about the tutor's wig. The classroom erupted. The tutor, red-faced, declared there would be consequences. You kept your head down. It didn't matter. Your fate was already sealed. The door opens. The schoolmaster steps in, slow and stiff. He doesn't meet your eye, but he nods at the table. That's the signal. You move quietly, slipping off your coat and laying your hands palm up. The table's cold through your shirt. You grit your teeth, not from fear, but from something else. Resentment, or shame, or the deep, aching confusion that comes when justice feels upside down. The lash falls. You don't cry out. You haven't in years. The first few times you did, with voice echoing down stone halls mixing with the candle smoke. They looked almost guilty, but not anymore. Now it's just process. 5 lashes today. Could have been 10. Afterward you button your coat again. The schoolmaster mutters something about honour, about duty. You nod. It's easier that way. And then you're dismissed. Back in the courtyard he's still laughing. He asks if it hurt. You say nothing. He offers you a candied plum from his pocket. You take it. Because that's the role. The noble child and the shadow boy. Punishment and reward. 2 halves of a broken coin. At night the castle grows quiet. You share a chamber. Not equal in size, but close enough. He snores gently. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the sting in your hands rise and fall like waves. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if he took the blame. Just once. If the cane landed where it belonged. But that's not the world you live in. You roll onto your side and close your eyes. Tomorrow he'll cheat at chess, or knock over a lamp or skip lessons, and the lash will fall again, not on the guilty, but on the nearest skin the world deems disposable, and for now, that skin is yours. The days blur together. Lessons, meals, punishment, repeat. The tutors have grown used to the arrangement. They glance at him when he slips, and then at you when it's time to pay the price. There's no formal announcement, no judgment, just the quiet motion of your body stepping forward, sleeves rolled, neck bowed. Everyone knows the script. At meals, you sit beside him. Not too close, just enough to be convenient. You're offered the same food but never the same cut. He gets the roasted thigh, you get the wingtip. He gets the sweet wine, you get watered ale. Still, some call it privilege. After all, you live inside the castle, don't you? Sometimes he defends you. Once, a stable boy mocked the way you walked after a particularly brutal thrashing. The noble boy shoved him into the horse trough. Later he brought you a cushion, said, "Sit on this. You look like you've been riding a dragon." You almost laughed. Almost. That's the strange part. You do care for him. Not like a brother, not quite, but close. You've seen his loneliness, his frustration. You've watched him cry over a lost dog, seen how hard he tries to win his father's approval. In private, he's different, softer, more afraid. Once, when he fell ill with fever, you stayed up 3 nights to wipe the sweat from his brow. And yet, the next week, when he shattered the tutor's inkwell in a tantrum, you were the one lashed for it. That's the part they don't write in the books, the part where loyalty and pain blur together. You're not just a stand-in, you're a mirror, a vessel for all the rage the world can't direct at a boy born too high. There are others like you, in other estates, in other castles. You hear their stories when you meet at festivals or during short visits. One boy says his master apologizes every time. Another says he never speaks to him outside of lessons. One says he was whipped until his back bled, while the noble son watched from the window, sipping cider. That boy didn't come back the next year. You wonder what your life will be like when he comes of age, when he no longer needs you. Will they cast you out, offer a coin and a pat on the shoulder? Or will you be absorbed into his household as a servant, a footnote to his rising star? The truth is, you don't know, and neither does he. Sometimes he stares at you with something like guilt in his eyes. Other times, he boasts about how the lash has never touched him. You're never sure which version of him is real. One evening, as you sit beside the hearth, he asks you if you'd ever trade places. You pause, not because you're unsure, but because you've never been asked. "No," you say finally. "I wouldn't want your life." He looks surprised. You think of all the rules, the expectations, the false smiles he must wear. Then you think of the whip, the bruises, the way your body absorbs someone else's punishment day after day. Maybe you're both trapped, just in different ways. The door creaks open with a groan, and the smell hits you first. Not foul, not like the pits or the plague houses, but sharp, sour, almost metallic. It clings to the stone walls, rides the steam that curls from the wooden tubs at the far end of the workshop. You step inside and your boots splash into shallow troughs, filled with cloudy liquid. You blink against the rising haze and pull your scarf tighter. Today, you're not here to carry a bucket, not to patrol a gate or measure a sentence. Today, you're here to work wool, but not with shears or spindles or looms. No, your job is much simpler, far more physical, and infinitely more unpleasant. You're a fuller, and you clean and soften raw wool cloth by stomping on it with your bare feet, in tubs filled with stale human urine. Yes, that kind of urine. You roll up your trousers and wade into the nearest vat. The fabric has already been soaked, thick sheets of coarse wool, heavy with lanolin and dirt. Your task is to tread it until it loosens, until it flattens, until the grease and muck release their hold. And to do that, your city has gifted you a vat of pungent liquid once known as lant. In case you're wondering, yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. Collected human urine, aged for days to encourage ammonia. Buckets are left outside homes and taverns, with signs offering a coin for a full container. Some families, desperate for income, contribute willingly. Others look the other way. Either way, someone collects it all, hauls it to the fulling shops, and pours it into these troughs where you now stand. The sting is immediate. Your feet prickle, your skin tightens. But the worst part is the warmth, body temperature somehow, though it's been sitting for days. You try not to think about it. You lift one foot, then the other, working the fabric beneath your soles, churning it slowly like grapes in a wine press made for nightmares. You've been told it works, that the ammonia in urine breaks down the grease, softens the wool, helps it absorb dye more evenly. And it's true. When you hold the finished product in your hands days later, it's softer, denser, more luxurious. It's also strangely warm, as if it remembers the effort you put into it. Around you, other fullers stomp in silence. No one talks. Conversation leads to breathing, and breathing leads to smelling. You focus on the rhythm. Heel, toe, press, turn. Like a dance choreographed in shame. Your feet go numb after a while and you're grateful. That means you can work faster. Once, a merchant from the city passed by the shop and wrinkled his nose. "How do they stand it?" he asked, as if you were a curiosity in a zoo. You didn't answer, just kept stomping. Sometimes the vats foam, sometimes they bubble. On hotter days they hiss. You try not to ask why. Curiosity has no place here. Only muscle, only repetition. At midday, you break for bread, but not outside. You can't. The smell follows you, trails behind, your every step. Even the rats seem to hesitate near your bench. So you sit in the corner, chew dry crusts and count the hours until your shift ends. You've heard stories of fullers in ancient Rome doing this work with songs and wine to numb the senses. Here, you get neither. Just the splash, the stink, and the stubborn folds of wool beneath your aching feet. And you haven't even reached the dye baths yet. The second part of the day is somehow worse. The wool, now soft and free of grease, is dragged from the vats and wrung out with strong arms and slippery palms. You help haul it to the drying racks, your hands steaming in the cool air. Every drop that runs off your fingers smells like something a person should never touch, let alone live with. Once drained, the cloth goes to the dye house. It's quieter there. No splashing, no groaning underfoot, just long, low basins filled with deep colours and heat. You'd think this part would be better. It should be better. But the dye house is its own kind of prison. The colours are beautiful, yes. Crimson, indigo, green, so dark it looks black. But they come at a price. The red is made from crushed insects. The blue from fermented plants soaked until the smell is nearly sweet and wholly suffocating. You breathe shallow. You feel it coat your throat. You dip the cloth slowly, working the colour through it. Some fullers use sticks, but today you're using your arms. The water's warm, almost hot, and the dye clings like paint. Your forearms stain quickly. The red won't wash off for days. That's fine. It's the sting that gets you, the wounds from earlier, the small cracks between your toes, the raw skin on your heels. Burn now as if scalded. Still you work. You flip the cloth, fold it over, twist it through itself like a knot. Every fold must take the colour evenly, or the client will return it. And no one wants to deal with a noble woman who claims her new gown smells like the alley behind a tavern. The master fuller watches from the corner. He never speaks, just nods or frowns. You can read him well enough now. His nod means nothing. His frown means you'll stay late. You've seen what happens when the dyeing goes wrong. One boy dropped a bundle of wool into the blue vat and forgot to stir. It came out patchy, uneven. A shame, really. The master beat him with a paddle and tossed the cloth onto the fire. Days of stomping and steeping, reduced to ash and a bruise. Your hands move faster after that memory. By evening your back is screaming and your knees ache like they're filled with wet sand. The sun is long gone. You carry the dyed wool to the drying racks near the hearth, where the heat from the coals rises gently, lifting the stink just enough to feel like it's escaping. It's not. You know that by now. You peel off your overshirt. The sleeves are dyed to the elbow. Underneath, your skin is blotched with angry pink patches where the urine and the dye have done their work. You wash with lye soap, rough, bitter, and cold. It stings. You've stopped wincing. On the way out, a merchant drops off a fresh bundle of raw wool. He doesn't enter, just leaves it by the gate and walks away, holding a perfumed kerchief to his face. You pick it up and carry it inside. Tomorrow the vats will be full again, and your feet will be needed. Again. The sign above the door swings gently in the breeze, a weather-worn wooden plank with a red and white striped pole painted across it. You push open the creaky door and step inside, not for a shave, but for a job. One that includes razors, scissors, boiling water, and saws. You're not just the town barber, you're also the surgeon. The shop smells of clove oil and iron. A cracked mirror leans against the wall, reflecting the blur of your own face as you sharpen your blades. In one corner, a barber's chair, polished but scarred, with a dark red cushion that's been restuffed too many times. In the other, your surgical table, a plank laid across two barrels stained in places no scrubbing could clean. You started with haircuts. That's how everyone begins. A bit of powder on the cheeks, a quick shave, the occasional wig adjustment. But over time, you were asked for more. A tooth pulled, a boil lanced, a finger stitched after a tavern brawl. You learned by doing. That's how it works in this trade. No formal school, no parchment on the wall, just calloused hands and the trust or desperation of your neighbours. Your tools hang in a row, scissors, razors, forceps, bone saw, all clean, all sharp, all a little too close together. This morning you have a patient. He arrives limping, carried in by two friends, his leg wrapped in a soiled cloth already darkening with fresh blood. Crushed, one mutters. Wagon wheel. You nod, offer a boiled rag to bite, and heat your blade over the hearth without a word. There's no time for ceremony, no anaesthetic either. You pour strong ale into the man's mouth and some over the wound. He screams before you even begin. You whisper something, soothing, meaningless, and then saw through bone. It's not elegant, but it's efficient. That's the goal. Get through the cut before the shock sets in too deep. You've learned to count the strokes. 4 for a clean shin, 6 if the bone's splintered. You cauterize the wound with a hot iron. The smoke rises in a thin curl. The screaming stops. His friends look pale. One retches into your shaving basin. You wash your hands. The bloodstains don't come off, not really. You wipe them on a cloth and toss it into the basket behind the chair, where it will sit with the others until laundry day, a day no one ever volunteers for. But surgery is only half of your work. That same afternoon you shave a constable's face, careful to avoid the cut he got while chasing a pickpocket. You trim a widow's hair and listen while she talks about her cat. You scrape plaque from a merchant's yellowed teeth and wonder if his breath will ever recover. Some days you go house to house, a mother with a feverish child, a man with a toothache so deep he's offered you half a chicken just to end it. You pull the tooth, and he sobs with relief and spit down his chin. You mop it up gently. Then you charge him a full chicken anyway. You'll need the bones for soup. You're respected, feared, depended on. When the real physicians ride through town in their wigs and silks, they sneer at your tools, but they never stay long. And when they're gone, who do the people return to? You. The sun dips low, casting long shadows across your shop as you sweep away hair and ash in equal measure. You hang your apron by the door and light a candle, its flame flickering against the brass of your instruments. Everything must be cleaned before tomorrow. You've learned that lesson the hard way. Once, early in your career, you reused a blade too soon. A small cut on a boy's arm turned black by the end of the week. His mother never looked at you again. Now, you boil everything. Razors, forceps, even the combs. You soak them in vinegar, scrub with bristle brushes until your knuckles ache. It's not enough, you suspect, but it's what you have. You sit for a moment by the hearth, rubbing your back. The day's patience blur together. The broken finger you splinted with cloth and a spoon. The abscess you drained that sprayed like a bitter fountain. The young man with shaking hands who asked you quietly if the trembling was a sign of madness. You told him no. You didn't believe it, but you said it anyway. Your shop is more than a place for grooming. It's confession, a court, a last resort. People tell you things with the understanding that you will never repeat them. Affairs, illnesses, regrets. You nod, you shave, you cut, you sew. You bury their secrets with each loose tooth and slice of infected flesh. And once a month, you perform bloodletting. Some swear by it. Others only do it because they're told to. You tie the leather strap, prick the vein, catch the blood in a shallow bowl. You dispose of it in the alley near the privies. The rats are used to it. You keep a journal under your bed. Nothing fancy. Just notes, names, dates. The occasional sketch of a wound or odd rash. It's not science, not really. But it's yours. A record of the bodies you've helped and the ones you've failed. You read it some nights when the wind keeps you awake. There's talk of change coming. You've heard rumours of hospitals, places with clean beds and doctors in crisp coats. The barbers laugh at that. They'll miss the clatter of our scissors, one said last week. You nodded, but part of you wonders. Maybe they're right. Or maybe your time is ending, but not yet. A knock comes at the door, soft, urgent. A woman stands in the dark with her daughter in her arms. The child is pale, wheezing. "Please," she says. No coin in her hand, no promise of payment, just that word. You don't hesitate. You push the chair aside and lay the girl down gently. You reach for your satchel. You light another candle. You don't even feel tired anymore, because when someone's in pain, they come to you. Not the Lord, not the priest, not the physician who left after a week of bad wine. You, with your cracked mirror and blood-stained, rags and hands that shake only when no one's watching. You are the barber surgeon, and until someone else shows up with steadier hands, you'll keep cutting, stitching, draining, scraping, and listening, always listening. The chain digs into your palm as you tug it forward, step by cautious step through the slush of the early morning street. Behind you, the weight shifts and grumbles. A low guttural sound vibrates through the links and into your spine. You keep moving. You have to. Because if he decides he doesn't want to follow you anymore, if this is the day he grows bored or irritated or hungry, then it'll be your blood soaking the cobbles. You are the bear leader. Your job, keep the bear entertained, controlled, fed, danced if necessary. He belongs to a nobleman with a taste for exotic amusements. It's not your bear, but his moods, those are yours to manage. You glance back. The bear squints into the morning light, tongue flicking lazily from his mouth. His fur is matted, especially around the neck where the collar has rubbed raw. He smells of meat and straw and something older, deeper, something like ancient fur and firelight, something wild. Today, you're leading him into the village square. There's a fair. Not for the commoners, not really. This is for the rich, merchants, landowners, a minor baron or two, and the bear is the highlight. Not just any bear, they'll say. A dancing bear, the nobleman insists. You've trained him, sort of. When you play the fiddle, he sways. Not to the music, but to the memory of pain. You hate it. Hate that he was taught this with hot irons and shouted commands long before you ever held the chain. Now he dances when he's nervous. When he hears the tune, his body rocks from side to side, searching for the pattern that won't get him whipped. But you do try to be gentle. You sneak him honey when you can. Let him lie on softer straw. Talk to him when no one's listening. Sometimes he huffs softly back. It's the closest thing you've felt to affection in months. The village gatekeeper eyes you as you pass. His hand rests near his pike. You give a nod. He doesn't return it. You've brought the bear through here before. Last time it growled at a child who got too close. That boy still has the scar. It wasn't the bear's fault. The child threw a stone, but no one remembers that part. As you enter the square, the crowd gathers. Some cheer, some jeer. You pretend not to hear the whispers. That thing should be put down. Look at its eyes. Demon eyes. The bear shifts behind you, tugging slightly. You give the signal, low, steady pressure, and he settles. You tie him to the post loosely so he can move. Then you take out the fiddle. Your fingers tremble. The strings are damp. You draw the bow once and the bear lifts his head. Twice and he begins to sway. The people love it. They clap, laugh, toss a few coins at your feet. The nobleman watches from under a fine green awning, sipping wine he didn't offer you. He doesn't clap, just nods once like he's pleased or bored. You hate this part most of all. The bear finishes the routine and slumps to the ground, panting. You kneel beside him, shielding his eyes from the sun. You whisper a word you've repeated so many times it's lost all meaning. Good. You mean it every time. A child approaches, holding out an apple. You almost shout, "Don't get close," but the bear surprises you. He gently accepts the fruit and eats it, slow and deliberate, as if to prove he still has some dignity left. You exhale, but the day's not over yet. The fair continues long after the performance ends, but no one asks about the bear again. They've seen what they came to see. They move on to the puppet show, the roasted chestnuts, the tightrope walker balancing over an alley strung with bunting. You remain behind the green awning, wiping the sweat from the bear's brow with the hem of your tunic. He blinks slowly, the kind of blink that says, "I've seen too much and understand too little." A servant eventually brings a wooden tray. Not for you, of course, for the bear. A slab of dried meat, half a melon, and a few crusts. The same servant drops a coin into your hand without looking at your face. It's lighter than usual. You don't argue. You've learned not to. The nobleman is already in conversation with someone else, pointing at a falconer's glove, laughing like nothing's ever gone wrong in his life. You lead the bear back through the alleys, away from the stalls and chatter. He's slower now. Each footfall is heavy, and he groans slightly on inclines. His joints aren't what they were. You wonder how much longer he'll last. Not in terms of years, but performances. Days like this take something out of him that won't grow back. Back at the stable where he sleeps, you remove the collar. It takes effort. Your hands still shake when working the clasp, but once it's off, he slumps into the straw with a low grunt. You stroke the fur behind his ears, the only place that hasn't gone rough or bald from years of wear. For a moment you both sit in silence, and then the bear does something strange. He leans into you, not aggressively, not out of hunger, just wait. A slow, deliberate press of muscle and warmth, like he's offering you shelter or asking for it. You sit still, letting him rest. You imagine the two of you in another life, a quiet cottage by the forest, no crowds, no chains, no nobleman with coins and boredom, just trees and rivers and the two of you sleeping beneath the stars. You know it's fantasy. You hold on to it anyway. Someone once asked if you were afraid of him. You said no. What you didn't say was that you're afraid of what happens after him. When the bear is too tired to dance, when the nobleman finds a new pet, a new novelty, what will happen to the old bear then? And what will happen to you? Because the truth is, you don't have another skill. You weren't born a tradesman. You can't read or write well enough to clerk. You can't hold a sword steady, not since your shoulder injury. You're a man who leads a bear, and when the bear goes, "Who are you?" you lay out fresh straw, fill his water, and bolt the gate. Before you leave, you turn back. He's already asleep, one paw curled under his chin like a child. You smile, just a little, and for now, that's enough. You pull the chain over your shoulder and walk out into the dusk where the streets are quiet again and the laughter is all blown away. The cart is rickety, the wheels moaning on every cobblestone, but it doesn't matter. You won't be riding it. You'll be standing on it, or flailing beside it, depending on how well the crowd plays along today. You adjust your dusty cap, throw a glance toward the clouds overhead, grey as usual, and then reach inside the crate for your companion, a toad. It's not poisonous, not magical, just plain and squat and a little annoyed to be here. You've painted a small red mark on its back for flair. The crowd loves a little theatre. You're a toad-eater, the lowest-ranking actor in a travelling medicine show. Your job is to fake an illness, convincingly, and then fake a miraculous recovery after drinking your master's so-called cure-all. It's part performance, part scam, and all survival. Your master, the doctor, is already on his crate, wrapped in a faded velvet coat, holding a bottle high like a holy relic. He's bellowing about ancient herbs, distant temples, secret recipes guarded by Eastern monks. None of it true, of course. But it's not about truth. It's about rhythm. Words that sound like hope. Tones that drip with promise. Then comes your cue. You stumble into the square, clutching your stomach, moaning just loud enough to draw curious eyes. You collapse theatrically near the cart. Someone in the crowd gasps. The bottle stops midair. The doctor turns, gasps as well. What luck! A man has been stricken on the very day he arrived to town. He crouches beside you, uncorks the vial with a flourish, and tips the liquid between your lips. It's bitter, herbal, and completely harmless. Just a mixture of alcohol and mint, sometimes fennel. But your job isn't to taste it. Your job is to transform. You convulse once, then twice, then rise with wide eyes, stumbling to your feet like a man reborn. You shout something. I can feel my legs. I can see. I'm cured. Whatever suits the flavour of the day. You toss the toad in the air for drama. It thumps softly onto the cart and does its part by blinking, which everyone finds hilarious. And just like that, the coins come out. You hop off stage as others gather. The doctor sells tiny bottles for a few pence each. He calls it elixir, panacea, draught of vitality, whatever suits the region. You linger at the edge of the crowd, pretending to tremble just a little longer, wringing out every drop of sympathy. If you're lucky, someone presses a coin into your hand. If not, at least you get the leftover stew tonight. You learn the act in bits. First the collapse, then the cure, then the deeper tricks, the fake cough with blood made from beet juice, the trembling hand that stops just after the drink. You once chewed soap to make your mouth foam. The master was impressed. But it's not just performance, it's risk. Once a woman claimed you were her cousin. Dead. She screamed that you were a ghost. Another time, a child tried the tonic and vomited all over the stall. You had to carry him home, pretending it was a purification. The crowd bought more bottles than ever that day. You're always on the edge, of lying, of laughing, of losing the whole illusion. But you're good. Maybe too good. And tomorrow, in another town, you'll die again. And rise. By dusk, the square empties out. The doctor packs the unsold bottles into a crate lined with straw, whistling a little tune that's too cheery for how cold it's gotten. You gather up the props, the cloth for fainting, the spoon for reviving, and of course the toad. He sits quietly now in a tin cage, eyes like wet pebbles. You feed him a fly and whisper, "You're the real star here," though he doesn't seem moved. Tonight, you camp just outside the village. Too many folks grow suspicious if you stay near the inn. You've heard the words, frauds, liars, beggars in costume. You're not welcome under warm roofs, so you settle for firelight and boiled onions. Your boots stay on, always. You've left towns in a hurry before. The doctor drinks from one of his own bottles, mostly to warm himself. "You sold it today," he mutters, tipping his hat down over his eyes. "That boy really believed you were dying. Good quiver in the hand." You nod, but you're already thinking about tomorrow. What act will it be? Blindness cured? Lameness lifted? A miraculous recovery from sudden fits? Sometimes you get to be creative. Once you claim to be unable to speak, holding up signs until the elixir returned your voice. Another time you feigned madness, laughing into your sleeve until the crowd grew nervous. When you drank the tonic and wiped your eyes, the silence that followed was real. People wanted to believe, and you gave them permission. But there's a cost. There are nights your muscles cramp from all the fake seizing. Nights you lie awake feeling the weight of every lie press into your ribs. You tell yourself it's just acting, that no one gets hurt. But deep down, you remember the old man in Northbury who stopped taking his real medicine, convinced your tonic did more. He died weeks later. You heard about it through a stable hand. The doctor shrugged it off. He was sick anyway. You're not sure when the line blurred. You used to think you'd only do this for a season, long enough to save up, move on, find something respectable. But the coins come easier now. The act is second nature, and besides, who else is going to take in a boy who faints on command and carries a toad in his sleeve? You roll over by the fire, pulling your coat tighter. The wind whistles through the trees, but you're warm enough. You stare up at the stars and wonder how many people out there are drinking your lies tonight. How many believe they've been healed? And then, for just a moment, you let yourself believe it too. That maybe somehow your performance did something real. That maybe laughter, even if bought by illusion, has value. The doctor's snore rises beside you. The toad stirs once in his cage, then sleeps again. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you'll die again at precisely noon, and rise, perfectly cured just in time for the coins to fall. The shouting starts before the bidding. It always does. The crowd jostles, drinks in hand, laughter bubbling just under the surface like something boiling. A man waves a coin in the air, another calls out something crude, someone else whistles. Not at you, but at her. The woman standing beside you, head bowed, bonnet slipping sideways, cheeks flushed with more than shame. You are not for sale today, but you've seen what happens when you are. Because this isn't a livestock market. Not quite. It's a wife sale, and your job today is to play the part of assistant, announcer, or maybe just distraction. You help the husband hold the rope, or you hold the child while the bidding begins. It depends on the day. The rope, that's the important bit. It's tied loosely around the woman's waist or wrist, or sometimes around both like she's some wandering animal. It's not legally required, but people expect it. Symbolism, a theatrical flourish for the mob, as if binding her makes the whole thing less human. The husband stands tall, puffed up with ale and self-righteousness. He's loud, he has to be. He talks about her flaws like he's haggling over a mule. She nags, she spends, she don't warm the bed no more. He laughs. So does the crowd. You don't. You've seen enough of these to know it's rarely about the woman. It's about his debt, his pride, his failure. And this is the show. The part where he pretends he's letting go, when really he's just clawing for control one last time. The woman doesn't speak. She knows better. Some cry, some stare dead ahead. Once, one spat on the ground and cursed the whole town. They cheered louder for her. You've memorized the rhythm of these events. First the opening bid, always too low. Someone shouts sixpence and the crowd howls. The husband pretends to be insulted, though he expected it. Then someone offers a shilling, maybe two. If she's young or quiet or pretty, the price climbs. You've seen as high as 5 shillings and a jug of cider, and then sold. No hammer, no paperwork, just a handshake and a turning away. The rope is passed. The woman follows the new man. Sometimes she walks, sometimes she's pulled. And just like that, a marriage is undone. You help sweep the stage, if there is one. You pocket a few coins tossed your way. You don't ask what happens next. You know, it's not your place. But this one today, she looked at you. Not a long look, not pleading. Just a moment of eye contact while the bidding rose. Like she saw you. Like she was asking if you saw her. You did. And now you're wondering why you keep coming back. Why you help hold the rope. Why you stand beside the shouting. Maybe it's the coin. Maybe it's the fear. Or maybe it's just the feeling that if you weren't here, someone worse would be. Still, you hate the sound of the rope sliding through a man's fingers like it's nothing but twine. After the sale, the square empties fast. Not out of shame. Just boredom. There's always another spectacle waiting. A cockfight, a drunken brawl, or a cheap musician plucking out dance tunes on a broken fiddle. The crowd drifts, and the echoes of laughter die out between stone walls, leaving behind a few muddy footprints and a woman with a new last name she didn't ask for. You stay behind to help gather the leftover scraps. Someone dropped half a meat pie in the rush. You brush off the dirt and pocket it. Tonight's supper. Nearby, the rope lies in the slush, forgotten, or maybe discarded. The husband's already gone, stumbling toward the tavern with his coins clinking like applause. The new man stands quietly with his purchase. He doesn't touch her yet, just stares like he's trying to figure out what he's bought. She doesn't look at him, or you. She adjusts her bonnet, turns her shoulders inward and waits. When he finally nods, she follows. You watch them go, your boots stuck in place. You've seen this ending before. Sometimes it's better than before. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes she disappears from the town entirely. You remember 1 month ago who came back. She'd been sold to a cobbler with kind eyes and calloused hands. She returned to visit her sister, walking with a straight back and a small bundle of new linen under her arm. Said little, smiled once. It wasn't much, but it was something. Still, those are rare stories. You ask yourself how this ever became normal. In taverns, the old men call it tradition. They joke about it. Cheaper than a divorce, they say. Because actual separation through the courts is nearly impossible for most. It requires petitions, signatures, church approval. And even then, it costs more than anyone here earns in a year. But if you tie a rope and find a crowd, that's all it takes. Some women beg for it. That's the part people don't talk about. When the husband is cruel, when there's no peace in the house, some women ask to be sold, not because they want to be owned by another, but because even the unknown is better than the life they have. You heard one whisper, "At least he won't hit me." She said it while fixing her bonnet in a broken mirror. Her hands never stopped trembling. You once thought about leaving this job, thought about learning a trade, moving to a place where people don't trade lives in public squares. But what trade would take you? What place doesn't have its own ways of breaking people quietly? So you stay. You help tie the rope. You sweep the square. You tell yourself it would happen with or without you. You don't sleep well on the nights after sales. You lie on your cot staring at the ceiling, hearing phantom shouts and laughter long after the crowd's gone home. You think of the woman in the green dress, the one who looked at you today. Tomorrow you'll probably carry a cartload of cider to the market, or repair a broken fence. Something useful, something forgettable. But tonight, you remember the sound of rope and how quiet her footsteps were when she walked away. You wait until the church bell rings midnight before you move. Not because you're superstitious, though you've picked up your fair share of odd rituals, but because that's when the streets go still. That's when even the drunkards have gone to bed and the constables begin to yawn at their posts. That's when your shovel makes the least noise. You're not a thief, at least not in the usual sense. You don't steal bread or rings or purses. You steal bodies. Well, you used to. That part of your life is behind you now. Probably. You were a resurrectionist, one of the many who made their living digging up the dead and selling them to anatomy schools. A shadow profession, technically illegal, widely known, and quietly encouraged by those who benefited most from it. Doctors, surgeons, students of science who needed real bodies to cut open. There was a time when you never thought you'd touch a grave, but then came the debt, the hunger, the way your boots wore thin and your pride thinner still, and someone said, "There's coin in the ground, if you know where to dig." So you learned. The trick, as always, is speed. You don't need the coffin, just the body. You dig down, crack the lid, and hook a rope beneath the arms or under the shoulders. You don't take anything but the corpse. Clothes and rings are left behind. That would be theft. What you're doing? It's science. That's what you tell yourself anyway. You work with a partner, you have to. One keeps watch, the other digs. You switch when your arms get tired. You use a wooden shovel, worn soft at the handle, and never speak above a whisper. Even laughter is dangerous in this trade. You've seen men arrested for a single cough in the wrong cemetery. The pay is good. Shocking, really. Medical colleges pay per body. More if it's fresh. Even more if the subject is tall, muscular, or otherwise educational. You once carried off a man with a broken spine, earned double for the novelty. But the risk never leaves you. You sleep light. You flinch at lamplight in alleyways. And you learn to lie well. To the baker, who wonders why you're awake at dawn. To the priest who catches your eye during sermons and sees something under your skin. And sometimes there are accidents. Once you opened a grave too early. The dirt was soft, the coffin still warm. Your partner paused. You didn't. You hauled the body out and realized it wasn't cold enough. It gasped. You dropped it, stumbled backward into the gravestone. Your partner screamed. The man on the ground wheezed once, twice, then went still. You never told anyone. You left the body and ran. You swore to stop after that, and you did. Mostly. But every now and then, when the rent's due and the streets are quiet and the earth looks soft, you walk by the cemetery wall and feel the shovel's ghost in your hands. Tonight, though, you're just passing by. A fog creeps low between the headstones. Somewhere, an owl hoots, and you keep walking, coat pulled tight, eyes forward, because the dead should rest, even if the living can't. You find yourself in front of the old anatomy school one morning, just looking. The brass plaque is tarnished now, its letters dulled by soot and rain. Students come and go, white-aproned and fresh-faced, clutching notebooks, their voices low and urgent with theories. You used to watch from the back alley when deliveries arrived, when they wheeled the bodies through the servant's door covered with cloth, pretending it was laundry. You wonder if any of them ever asked where the specimens came from. Probably not. Easier not to know. You light your pipe with trembling fingers and turn away before anyone recognizes you. Not that they would. Years of dirt and shadows have erased the sharper parts of your face. You're just another man in a too long coat, walking with purpose and without a destination. You tried real work after you stopped digging. Carting barrels, mending fences, even worked as a night watchman for a week until someone figured out who you were. The name resurrectionist clings longer than mud. You keep it quiet now. When asked about your past, you say you were a graveyard keeper, which is technically true. You kept your eyes on the graveyards, just not in the way they expect. One night, in a pub, a drunken doctor thanked you, said he couldn't have passed his examinations without people like you. You nodded and smiled and then watched him vomit into a flower pot. There was no glory in it. No purpose either, not really. You told yourself it was about science, that the men you disinterred were contributing to knowledge, that they were doing more good in death than they ever could in life. But late at night, lying on your straw mattress, you remember their faces. You told yourself you never looked, but you did, just once. And that was enough. The worst wasn't the shame. It was the silence, the kind that followed you home, the kind that crawled into your clothes, into the soles of your feet, and sat quietly in the corners of your room while you slept, or tried to. You never kept the coins long. They went to bread, to rent, to warm ale on colder nights. You have nothing to show for it now. No savings, no family. Just the knowledge that for a time you helped the city's finest doctors hold a scalpel with confidence and sleep with a clean conscience. You walk the cemetery now with different eyes, not as a scavenger, but as someone who finally understands the weight of stillness. You nod at the graves, you nod at the names. Sometimes you bring flowers. No one sees you do it. Once, you buried a stray dog that had been hit by a cart, dug the hole yourself, even lined it with stones. No one paid you, no one asked you to. But when you patted the earth down, something in your chest loosened. Not joy, exactly, just air. You're older now, slower. The shovel is gone. You've taken to carrying a walking stick. Instead, though some nights you still grip it like a handle and feel the old rhythm in your wrist. The tug, the pull, the lift, you shake it off and keep walking. Because what you do now is remember, and sometimes that's the harder job. The sky is still bruised with morning when you reach the edge of the field. A low mist clings to the grass, wrapping around your boots, swallowing your breath. There's no one else out here, not yet. Just you, a patch of wet earth, and a few handmade clappers strung together from tin scraps and twine. You're small. That's why they hired you. You're a child scarecrow, one of the quietest jobs in the world, and one of the loneliest. They don't say it quite like that, of course. They say bird boy or watch lad or just whistle from the porch and point to the field. You know what they mean. You grab the bundle of noisemakers, your ragged scarf, and trudge into the fog before the crows wake. There are real scarecrows out here too. Wooden crosses with mouldy hats and shredded coats, swaying gently in the breeze. But the birds have learned not to fear them. They're clever, those crows. They'll land right on the outstretched arms, pecking at the turnip heads with complete indifference. What they're afraid of is you. Well, sometimes you wave your arms when they approach. You shout. You stomp through the cabbage rows, swinging your clappers, hoping the sound is enough. Sometimes it works. Other times they just watch you, heads tilted, beady eyes sharp. You wonder if they're planning something. A quiet rebellion, perhaps. Your clothes are damp by midday. The dew soaks through everything. You shake your sleeves and stretch your fingers, already red with cold. No gloves. Your hands need to move fast, and besides, you lost one mitten in the mud 3 days ago. You hide the other in your pocket now, like a secret. Lunch comes in the form of a cold potato, maybe a hunk of crust. If you're lucky, someone brings you a bit of lard on bread, wrapped in a handkerchief. Usually not. You eat with your back against a fence post, eyes never leaving the fields. If the birds come while you're chewing, you leap up, half choking, and chase them away with a mouthful of crumbs. Your job sounds simple. Keep the crops safe. But you know it's not about the birds. It's about proving you're useful, being small but not a burden. You're cheaper than a scarecrow and twice as mobile. You work for half a penny a day, if that. But a warm word at dinner? That's the real wage. You work for the chance to stay. You hum to yourself sometimes. Not songs, just sounds. It fills the space. The wind doesn't talk much and neither do the turnips. Once you tried talking to the birds. You asked them what it's like to fly, to leave fields behind and go where the sun rises first. One crow hopped closer and cawed like it understood. Then it pooped on your boot and flew off. You didn't ask again. Afternoons drag. Your legs ache from stomping. Your voice goes hoarse from shouting. And always the cold. But there's a moment, just one, when the light hits the field in such a way that everything glows. The cabbage leaves shine like coins and your breath curls upward like smoke from a chimney. In that sliver of time, you almost feel like you belong here. You raise your arms, not to scare, not to shout, but just to feel the wind catch your sleeves, like wings. The wind picks up in the late afternoon, and with it comes the birds, dozens of them swirling black dots against the pale sky. They perch on fence posts, tree branches, even on the backs of the larger scarecrows, mocking their stiff, empty eyes. You grab your clappers and run toward them, hollering, voice cracking. Most take off in a flutter of wings. Most. One remains. A large crow with feathers like oiled leather and a beak chipped at the tip. He watches you. You wave. He doesn't move. You toss a clod of earth. He sidesteps it. Then he caws, not in fear, not in anger, just because. Then, with a few flaps of his wings, he's gone, leaving behind silence and a single feather spinning in the air. You pocket the feather. The sun finally begins to dip, pulling the chill down with it. You stamp your feet to stay warm, blow into your fists, squint toward the farmhouse. No signal yet. They haven't called you in. You know better than to leave your post too early. Once a boy did that, ran back before supper to warm up by the stove. When the crows ate half the barley shoots, they blamed him. The next morning his spot was empty, and a proper scarecrow stood where he used to. So you stay. You count stones, recite rhymes to keep your mind from wandering. You press your feet into the mud just to remember you're still solid. You look out over the field, not as a child, but as a wall. You're the scarecrow now, only colder, only hungrier. At last, a bell rings faintly from the farmhouse. That's your signal. You pick up your things, sling your clappers over one shoulder, and trudge toward the light. You don't expect praise. You rarely get it. Maybe a nod. Maybe a place near the fire if no one else is using it. You sit on the floor, pull off your boots, and peel away your socks, stiff with cold, but still yours. If you're lucky, there's stew. If you're luckier, there's bread to dip in it. Someone asks if you saw many birds. You shake your head, not wanting to explain the standoff with the one who didn't fear you. It feels too private, like something sacred. You sleep on a pallet stuffed with straw in the corner of the kitchen. It smells faintly of onions and ash. Better than the field. Warmer than the wind. You close your eyes and see rows of cabbages stretching out like a dream. You see the black crow watching you still, quiet and unblinking. You wonder if he ever watches the humans and thinks they're the ones who never fly. Tomorrow you'll rise before the sun again. You'll return to the field. The birds will come. Some will leave. Some will stay. And you'll raise your arms again, scarecrow, shadow, sentinel, until you're called home. You wake before dawn and head straight to the market. Not to buy, but to pick. Not fruit, not herbs. Bones. You're a bone picker, a profession no one speaks of proudly, yet one the city depends on more than it admits. The stalls haven't opened yet. The butchers are still sharpening knives behind closed shutters. That's why you arrive early, before the refuse is cleared, before the scraps are swept into the gutters. You carry a sack, a hooked stick, and a tin of ash to rub on your hands. The stink clings less that way. You start behind the taverns first. They throw out the good stuff after late-night stews, soup bones, roast knuckles, the occasional chicken foot with enough sinew to matter. You sort quickly, moving like a shadow. If someone catches you, they'll shout, maybe throw a boot, but if you're fast, they won't bother. You know the rhythm: swipe, stash, move on. The best bones are fresh, not too clean, then they've already been picked over, but not too bloody either, or the rot sets in. You're looking for solid, uncracked, useful pieces, bones with structure, with future, because once they're cleaned and boiled down, they'll become tools, combs, handles, buttons, or ground into powder for glue. Some even end up in the apothecary's jars labelled with words like calcined or medicinal ash. You've seen bones you collected on shelves beside rosewater and lavender. You find a large femur wedged between two crates and grin. It's cracked, but not through. You pop it into the sack and move on, slipping through an alley where the rats scatter ahead of your steps. A dog growls from the shadows. You toss it a gnawed lamb shank to keep it quiet. You make your way toward the slaughterhouse next. That's where the real bounty lies, if you're willing to fight for it. Not with fists, usually, but with speed. Other pickers arrive at the same time. Some are older. One's just a boy with eyes too tired for his age. You nod in mutual recognition. Competitors, but not enemies. The gutters here run thick, slippery. You tread carefully, one boot already cracked at the heel. The blood sticks to everything. But the bones, oh, the bones, lie in heaps behind the fence. You wait for the butchers to turn their backs, then dart in, grab what you can, and vanish. You've gotten good at it. One time a butcher saw you and threw a cleaver. It missed by a hair, thunked into the wall beside your head. He laughed. You didn't. By midday your sack is half full and your arms ache from hauling it across cobbles and slippery tiles. You stop by the tannery for a sip of water, rank and bitter, but it'll do. The tanner nods. He doesn't mind you. He knows what it's like to smell of death and be paid in scraps. Your hands are black with grime, your nails chipped, your back bent from crouching, but your mind stays sharp. You know the streets, you know the timing, you know where the offcuts fall and who throws away the best joints on which day. And that knowledge, that's your real trade. Not bone, but instinct. By late afternoon, the streets grow crowded and your job shifts from quiet scavenging to quick manoeuvring. You duck past carts filled with onions, sidestep chimney sweeps and apron-tied fishwives. You keep your sack tucked tight under your arm now. Too many fingers round here that itch to grab anything that isn't nailed down. And even if they don't want the bones, they might take the sack just to laugh. You cross into Spitalfields next, where the alleys narrow and the market smells sharper. Spices, brine, and something always just turning sour. Here, bone pickers compete not just with each other, but with dogs, pigs, and children who've been sent out with empty baskets and told not to come home until they're full of something. You nod at a girl crouched by a drain pipe, cracking knuckles and picking through cartilage like a jeweller inspecting gems. Some folks here call you a muckraker, others call you names not worth repeating. But there are a few who understand what you're really doing. Those who boil the bones for glue, those who make handles for knives and brushes, those who grind the smaller bits into powder for fertilizing the soil. They're your buyers. Quiet folks, rarely smiling, but steady. You find them behind side doors and back alleys. You offer your sack. They glance inside, run a hand through the contents, nod once, and give you a few coins wrapped in cloth. Some haggle, some don't. You never argue. Money's money, and you know what's worth more than a rib or a jaw. Once, a woman paid you extra for a whole stack of ox knuckles, said her brother carved chess pieces out of them. You never saw the chess set, but you imagine it sometimes. A board of polished white kings and pawns made from the scraps you pulled from the street. You keep a few pieces back for yourself now and then, not for crafting, just collecting. A curved chicken bone with a notch like a hook. A dog femur worn smooth at the edge, like it was loved. You don't know why. Maybe it's something to do with holding what the world leaves behind. Proof that you've touched something real, even if only after it was dead. As the light fades, you make one last pass by the soup kitchens. They toss out bones boiled beyond use, but every now and then something good slips through. A knuckle, a bit of spine. You check the pile, poke with your stick and fish out one last prize. It still smells of broth. You hold it for a moment before tucking it away. By the time you head home, the streets are quieter. You pass the night soil man going the opposite way, his bucket swaying, face set in a grim line. You nod. He nods back, an unspoken fellowship of the filthy. You reach your door, kick off your boots, and empty the sack onto a rag on the floor. You sort the bones in silence, fingers tracing familiar curves. The big ones go in one pile, the oddities in another, the cracked and broken. You'll toss them by morning. The rest will go back out with you at first light ready for trade. You stretch, shoulders stiff, hands aching. Another day done, and as you lie down, you listen, not to the city, not to the rats in the rafters, but to the soft clatter of bones settling behind you, like a whisper of all the lives that passed through your hands today. You wake to the scent of hot iron. Not the clean kind, the sharp, cloying kind that clings to scorched cloth and scalded fingertips. You're in a low brick building with windows too small and ceilings too low, and your fingers are already red from yesterday's burns. Because today, like most days, you're working as a rag ironer. Not a tailor, not a washer, just the one who irons, and not fancy linen either. Cast-offs, rescued garments, second and third-hand clothes that have seen more lives than you ever will. The city's poor send them in bundles. The pawnbrokers send them in sacks, and it's your job to make them presentable enough to sell again, or at least not reek. You reach for your first flat iron of the morning. It's been heating by the coals for an hour and you test it the old way, spitting on your fingertip and tapping the base. If it sizzles, it's ready. If it burns clean through, too late. You take the risk anyway. Time is money, and idle hands mean lost wages. The steam hisses as you press the iron down onto the rag shirt beneath you. The heat curls up through the cloth, into your sleeves, your chest. You press harder. The goal isn't just to flatten the cloth, it's to press out the stink, sweat, mildew, sometimes worse. You don't ask what stains are what. You don't want to know. Each piece you finish goes onto the pile behind you. Someone else will sort them. Someone else will stitch. Your job is heat and pressure. You've gotten good at it. Fast, too. You can flip a cuff flat in one stroke, smooth a waistcoat with your elbow while reaching for the next sleeve. But there's a risk. Always a risk. The irons must stay hot, but not too hot. Leave one too long on the coals and it'll blister the fabric. Worse, it could catch. You've seen it happen. Once, a woman's dress smoked so fast she couldn't beat it out. They rushed her outside, apron aflame, skin red beneath. She didn't come back after that. Her corner stayed empty for weeks. You hear a shriek and look up, heart pounding. But it's just steam. A pot boiling over by the coal stove. Still, your shoulders stay tense. Burn scars don't fade easy, and your hands already bear the memory of too many close calls. You stop for a sip of water, warm and dusty from the jug, then back to work. Sometimes you get odd pieces. A sailor's jacket heavy with salt. A child's frock with a single copper button shaped like a flower. Once, even a silk cravat so fine you wondered how it ended up here. You pressed it gently, your iron light is a whisper, wondering whose neck it once graced. The smell never leaves. Even when your shift ends, even when you wash your hands, even when you leave the building and breathe in the evening air, it clings to you. The stink of old fabric and scorched dye. You've come to recognize the scent not as foul but as honest. It tells the truth. Clothes live lives just like people. They sweat, they stretch, they wear out, and then they come to you for one last smoothing. By midday, the room is an oven. Your apron clings to your back, soaked through. The windows are cracked open, but no air moves. The only breeze comes from the swish of cloth as you flip another shirt onto the board and reach for your second iron. It's barely cooled, but it will have to do. You work shoulder to shoulder with other women, none of you speaking much. Conversations in here tend to fade fast. Too hot, too loud, too many burns to worry about. A dropped iron means a ruined shirt, or worse, ruined hands, so you stay focused, eyes on seams, ears on the hiss of heat, the scrape of metal. To your left, an older woman hums a slow tune under her breath, something from her childhood maybe. It floats in and out of the steam like a ghost you almost recognize. The rhythm helps, oddly. You match your strokes to it. Press, lift, fold, next. By the corner of the room sits a pile labelled dangerous. You're told not to touch those unless trained. They're infested, lice, or worse. Sometimes the rag pickers don't sort well enough, and vermin cling to the threads. Fleas love wool, mites burrow into seams, and once someone claimed they found a rat pup sewn into a coat lining. No one believed it, but no one forgot either. Still, accidents happen. A girl last week scratched too hard at her arm. 2 days later, she collapsed. The overseer blamed bad water, but the whispers said fever cloth. Fabric that held sickness like memory. You learned, quick, to wear gloves when you could. Not always possible, though. Gloves burn. Skin at least grows back. At the end of the day, you gather your own bundle, a few items not for sale, just salvage. A scarf with a moth hole you can patch. A linen smock that no one wanted, but fits you if you cinch it tight. You're allowed these bits, so long as you don't take anything too fine. They call it perks, but really it's payment in leftovers. Your fingers throb. The skin on your thumbs is a map of calluses and shiny scars. Still, you feel a strange pride in the neat stack of pressed clothes on your table. They look almost new, like they might start a new chapter in someone else's life. Out on the street, the world smells sharper. Bread, coal smoke, something fried. You breathe deep and try not to think of the scorched wool still clinging to your lungs. A boy runs past with a laundry cart shouting for space. He's off to collect more rags, more fuel for tomorrow's fire. As you walk home, you pass a shop window. Behind the glass, a suit jacket sits on a mannequin, crisp, clean, regal. You wonder, just for a moment, if it once passed beneath your iron, if some stitch on the inner sleeve still remembers the burn of your touch. You'll never know, but it's nice to imagine. You're crouched in a narrow wooden stool, knees bent, elbows aching, and your hands are wrist deep in someone else's hair. Not a friend, not even a customer, really. Just another body in the endless queue of heads that need treating. 'Cause today, you're a nitpicker, a delouser, a scalp scraper, a saviour to some and a source of shame to others. You hold the head steady with one hand and comb with the other. Not a gentle comb either. This one's made of bone, with teeth so fine they could shred a whisper. You drag it slowly, steadily, from scalp to tip, and listen for that telltale tick when it catches something. A louse, an egg, or just a stubborn knot holding on like it's got nowhere else to be. Your knees are already numb. Doesn't matter. There are 6 more heads waiting, and that's just the morning shift. You crack your knuckles, flex your fingers, and lean back into the task. The woman in your chair winces. Sorry, you mutter, though you're not. If you go soft, you'll miss the ones hiding just beneath the roots, those pale little devils that cling to warmth like secrets. Delousing isn't a glamorous job, but it's an essential one, especially in tenement housing. With whole families crammed into 2 rooms, lice spread like rumours. School children come in droves, factory girls with braids crusted in old soap, widows, drunks, even the occasional housemaid who pretends she's just itchy from flour. Though you both know better. You've seen it all. There's a technique to it. You start with the nape, where the eggs like to nest. Work in sections. Use oil if you can afford it. Lamp oil works best, though vinegar will do in a pinch. Some use pig lard, but that leaves a stink. You prefer rosemary if it's market day and there's a sprig left in the gutter. The smell makes the work feel less grim. You pause to wipe the comb. It's smeared now, tiny grey dots along the teeth. You tap it into a tin cup. Ping, ping, ping. Little monsters fall like iron shavings. It's oddly satisfying. The woman leans forward to scratch and you gently slap her hand away. You'll spread it worse, you say. She looks sheepish. You see that look a lot. The mix of shame and relief. Shame at needing your hands. Relief that someone knows what they're doing. Once, when you were just starting, you found a louse, the size of a raisin. It made you gag. Now, you barely blink. You've learned to recognise the signs faster than any doctor. Red patch behind the ear, eggs, tiny black flecks on the collar, droppings, that glazed look in the eyes. They haven't slept in days. Sometimes, if you're lucky, someone pays extra for you to burn the bedclothes too. You take them to the back alley, toss them in the pit and watch them curl into smoke. The smell is awful, but the peace of mind it gives is worth more than gold. You comb through another section. Clean. At last. But the job's not done, because tomorrow they'll be back. You stretch your back and shake out your fingers. The stool smells of vinegar, sweat, and a faint herbal trace of rosemary that barely holds the line. Outside, a child cries. Inside, another woman takes the chair. She's got her scarf pulled low over her ears and won't meet your eye. It's always the same. Shame comes first, then silence, then scratching. This one's got thick hair, the worst kind. Curls trap heat, trap bugs, trap the oil so the comb just glides over the top without grabbing anything useful. You lean in close and start the same rhythm again, scalp to tip, scalp to tip. You hum a little tune under your breath. Not for her, for you. Your tools are simple but sacred. One comb, one tin. A little dish of oil, cloudy from too many dips. You'd kill for a real brass knit lamp like the fancy barbers have, but this corner is all shadows and candle drips. You've learned to tell a louse from a knot by feel alone. There's a rumour, probably started by a girl like you, that Queen Elizabeth or I had a royal nitpicker. Not a maid, not a lady-in-waiting, a dedicated woman whose sole job was to keep Her Majesty's head pristine. You like that story. Makes your cracked thumbs feel a little noble. Your fingers work with practiced speed. Every once in a while you find a living adult, fat, dark and moving slow from the oil, and you pinch it clean between your nails. Gone. No ceremony. You don't flinch anymore. Some clients ask to keep their bugs. It's true. Superstition runs deep. One old man brought a little jar and asked you to drop in 3 lice. For luck, he said. Claimed they warded off the evil eye. Another woman buried her daughter's hair clippings and lice together in the garden. Said it would keep the fever from coming back. You've learned not to ask. Just take the coin and let them believe what they need to. Midway through the day, the matron passes by your booth. She gives a quick nod and hands you a cloth-wrapped bundle. Payment. You don't unwrap it right away. Better to keep the illusion alive. You've had everything from stale bread to half a turnip wrapped in those cloths. Once, even a pocket Bible with a single silver button sewn inside the binding. Still, it's something. When the last client shuffles out, you clean your tools with hot water, then boil the comb in vinegar. You do this every night. Not for safety, for ritual. The bugs may come back tomorrow, but for now, your comb is clean. That's enough. Outside, the light is low. The city shifts under soot and smoke. You wrap your shawl tight and walk past a row of children scratching their heads while their mothers barter for onions. One girl looks up and points at you. "That's the bug lady," she says. Her mother hushes her. You smile anyway, because you know what they don't. The work is filthy, yes, but it keeps them all just this side of chaos. You're crouched in the half-light of a candlelit hallway, squinting at the heel of a cracked leather boot. The air reeks of mildew and coal dust, and the soft hiss of gaslight from down the corridor does little to ease the gloom. Today, you're working as a leather patcher, a cobbler's assistant of the most lowly sort, assigned to the overlooked, the broken, and the smelly. This isn't fine boot making. No gleaming rows of polished wingtips or carved heels here. This is the back end of a world that walks. Servants' shoes, factory girls' slippers, miners' boots so caked in grime they stand on their own when you set them down. You don't so much repair as resurrect. The boots before you are particularly bad. The soles have come away from the upper like a yawning mouth, revealing a mess of straw stuffing and damp rot. Whoever wore them must have tramped through a swamp, or worse. Still, they were dropped off with a copper coin and a note. Need 2 more weeks, that's all. No name, just that desperate plea. You sigh, peel off your gloves, and get to work. First, you dig out the old thread. It flakes away in dusty curls. Then you scrape the leather clean with a sliver of bone, salvaged from a soup kitchen joint and whittled sharp. You smear on a paste made from pine resin and animal glue, thick as treacle and twice as sticky. It smells like burnt teeth. You bind the sole with twine, then clamp it using a heavy brick wrapped in cloth. You've never owned a proper clamp, but bricks you can always find. Around you, the workshop chatters quietly. Old men with cloudy eyes stitch slowly in the corner. A young boy curses softly as he jabs himself for the 3rd time. Somewhere near the stove, someone's heating up a pitch pot and humming through their teeth. The smell of burning wax competes with the leather stench. You move on to the next pair, children's boots. One's missing its heel, the other has a hole the size of a mouse. The lining is stuffed with something odd. Crumbs. No, crushed dry beans. Someone must have run out of rags. You can't fix that kind of poverty, but you can give the child another week or 2 without frostbite. You pause for a sip of water and glance at the wall above your station. There's a single scrap of parchment tacked there, written in looping script. Keep feet dry. Keep hope alive. It's the old master's saying before his hands shook too much to work. They say during long winters in the Victorian slums, families would take turns wearing the same pair of patched boots, rotating them by hour. The rest would stay indoors, barefoot on frozen stone floors, wrapping feet in scraps of newspaper. You once worked on a pair that had 6 different layers of soles stitched on, one over the next like rings in a tree trunk. The work is slow, the pay worse. But every stitch is a delay against despair, and that counts for something. You're elbow deep in the heel of a boot that smells like river mud and fireplace ash. It's splitting again, in the same place you patched last week. Whoever owns it must walk with a twist in their step, grinding the leather down on one side like a crooked wheel. You consider writing a note. Try walking evenly, but what's the point? People walk the way life pushes them. You reach for your awl and thread it through the coarse leather, tugging it tight. The thread's not even real sinew this time, just frayed cotton twine rubbed in tallow to keep it from snapping. You hum softly to keep your hands steady. 1, 2, tuck. 1, 2, tuck. Your neighbour, Agnes, mutters something about a boot that bled. You glance over. She's holding up a child's boot with a reddish stain on the inside. Blister opened, poor thing kept walking, she says, her voice flat. They all do. Then she shrugs and gets back to work. This is the part of history no one paints. No oil portrait ever showed cracked heels and bleeding arches. But you've seen shoes so stiff with dried blood you had to soak them for hours just to get the laces off. You've used candle wax to seal holes, shoemakers' pitch to waterproof soles, and once, only once, you tried stuffing a toe box with horsehair. It worked. Sort of. There are moments of strange beauty here too. You once found a child's boot with a silver button sewn inside, hidden, stitched in so tight it must have been secret. A charm, a token. You didn't ask. You just stitched it back in when you were done. There's a rhythm to this life. You patch, you mend, you rest your eyes when they start to blur. Then you begin again. The floor beneath you is scattered with nail heads, trimmings, leather scraps curled like old leaves. You never sweep until the end of the week. There's something satisfying about seeing how much you've chipped away. Outside, the bells toll. Quitting hour for the factories. Soon the door will creak open and someone will shuffle in, holding out a misshapen boot and asking, "Can you fix it?" Not how much or how long, just can you? As if the answer is the only thing standing between them and bare feet on cobblestones. And you'll say yes. Of course you will. You always do. Because in this little corner of the world, you're not just patching shoes. You're patching dignity. Quietly, anonymously, stitch by stitch. You light a fresh candle stub. The flame flutters. You pick up the next pair. Let the work continue. You're standing in the alley behind a tavern, clutching a brass keyring and trying not to gag. Your final job of the night is one of the strangest yet. You're a gong farmer's runner. Not the one who does the scooping. That's for someone bolder. You're the assistant, the go-between, the one who slips through tight lanes, unlocks cellar grates and signals when it's safe for the barrels to be hauled up. No one makes eye contact with you, which is fair, considering the stench clinging to your clothes. It doesn't matter that you haven't handled the night soil yourself, not today anyway. Once you've worked a week with a gong crew, the smell just lives on you. You've learned to walk softly. People don't like to be startled by someone who reeks of cesspits. Tonight's stop is a boarding house near the edge of town. The landlord waits by the back wall, pinching his nose with a handkerchief that doesn't help. He gestures to the metal chute behind him. "Third chamber's full. Rats again." You nod, produce your ring, and crouch to undo the latch. It squeals like it's in pain. You pull back the iron plate and lean aside as a thick, damp gust of air rises out. It smells of decay and cabbage and something vaguely metallic. The pit's nearly full. You flash your lantern once, twice. A signal. A creak sounds down the alley. The cart is coming. The gong farmer himself is a wide man with arms like butcher's hams and a face that says he stopped smelling things a decade ago. He nods at you, lifts a bucket with both hands and disappears into the pit. It's slow work. Dangerous too. People fall in. People drown. You've heard stories of gong farmers suffocating within seconds from the build-up of noxious gas. You never lean too close. Your job instead is to manage the route. Knock the doors. Whisper through cracks. It's tonight. Keep the windows shut. You've seen what happens when someone forgets. One woman threw open her shutters at the wrong moment and fainted dead away. You helped carry her inside. Her husband later brought you bread as thanks. And yes, there are perks. Your pay is higher than a chimney sweep's. People don't want to look at you, but they'll pay handsomely for the service. Some even offer extras, bottles of vinegar, soft cloths, once even a scrap of smoked meat. To keep you strong, they said. handing it over without touching your fingers. Still, you've noticed something strange in all these houses. No matter how poor, no matter how foul, there's always a candle or charm near the privy door. Salt lines, iron nails, chalk marks. Everyone fears what lives beneath. You don't. Not anymore. You just fear the day you forget your lantern, misstep, and join the ghosts they say drift beneath the floorboards, forever muffled, forever unspoken. But for now, you do what you always do. Click the keyring closed, signal for the next house, and walk on through the sleeping city, the quiet, guardian of the foulest secret it tries to hide. You've finished the last round of knocks. No angry faces tonight. No one shouted or slammed a door. It's almost peaceful, in a strange, sour sort of way. The gong farmer hoists the final barrel onto the cart, latches it down with a length of fraying rope, and gives you a grunt that passes for a good night. You're left alone in the alley as the wheels creak away into the fog. The night is thick, soft around the edges, and a cat slips past your legs, uninterested in your scent or your story. You lean against the brick wall, pocket your keyring, and exhale. It's hard to explain this job to someone who hasn't done it. They think it's disgusting, which, fair. But it's also more than that. It's the quiet rhythm of knowing a city's most hidden paths. The hush of a courtyard that hasn't seen the sun in days. The thrill of remembering which gates groan and which steps are cracked. The weight of doing a thing no one wants, but everyone needs. The worst part isn't the smell, surprisingly. It's the loneliness. The way your footsteps echo on stone when no one will walk beside you. You've started to talk to the shadows just to hear something back. "See that?" you whispered once to a fat rat perched on a ledge. They lit a new candle. The rat blinked, unimpressed. But tonight, as you wind your way home through cobbled streets and shuttered windows, something shifts. A girl in a nightdress peeks from behind a curtain and doesn't flinch. Just watches, then disappears. You almost smile. You pass the baker's shop, the one who always pretends not to see you. Tonight there's a cloth bundle on the stoop. You unwrap it. 2 stale rolls, no note, just enough to say, "I see you." The city, in its own grimy, gaslit way, is saying thank you. You've done your work. The streets will smell sweeter tomorrow. The chamber pots will be emptied. The rot beneath the world has been swept away, if only for one more night. You turn the final corner. Your flat is tiny, tucked above a disused stable, with soot-blackened windows and a floor that tilts ever so slightly to the left. You unlock the door, step inside, and let the silence settle. Outside, the fog thickens. Inside, you pull off your boots, caked with filth, but still holding together thanks to a kind cobbler's patch job. You'll leave a coin under their door tomorrow. You light a candle stub, wrap yourself in the one wool blanket you own, and settle onto the straw-stuffed mat. The day has ended. The work is done. And in this strange world of invisible labour, where the worst jobs keep the rest from crumbling, you've earned your rest more honestly than most. Sleep comes quickly. You've walked through shadowy streets and narrow alleys, climbed rooftops, stitched soles, scrubbed stone, and held back the rot beneath entire cities. The people whose names history forgot, those with blistered hands, bent backs, and stubborn hope, stood beside you, whispered stories into your ear, and showed you the strange, weary beauty of the jobs that kept the world turning. They never wore crowns or robes. They didn't sign decrees or build monuments. But every night they lit lanterns, lifted shovels, patched boots, and kept bread warm for another day. You felt the chill in their rooms, the weight of their buckets, the scratch of soot beneath their nails. Now let them fade back into the soft folds of time. The lanterns go out, one by one. The streets fall still. That patched boot rests beside a warm hearth. That crooked ledger is tucked beneath a straw mattress. The tavern tokens have been counted. The final chamber gate has been latched. The oil has stopped bubbling. Everything is quiet now. You did well to walk with them, to listen, to remember. And now your own eyes can grow heavy, knowing the world kept spinning because someone stayed up late, doing the hard, forgotten work. The night wraps around you gently, like the flannel sleeves of a borrowed uniform, warm with the memory of strange old jobs and the strange old souls who lived them. Drift softly, sleep deeply.